Dinoblade is finally here. What was once a small project just for one man to show off how well he could animate giant dinosaurs fighting with each other turned into a surprisingly good Souls-like experience. Of course, with every game coming off of a extremely small developer, especially one who basically decided to do it overnight after having so much feedback about people wanting a game like that, I am very pleased with how it turned out. Of course, I do want to point out that I try to do these reviews very unbiased, which I definitely feel like I do, but I'm sure the argument could be made that it's not completely unbiased, because if it was, I would be buying games that I don't want to play. And you would be right in that fact, but I also don't hold back on those games. Look at Black Ops 7. That game is awful. I'm a Call of Duty player at heart, and if anybody watching this has ever actually tuned into any Twitch streams recently, around the time of this video, you will know that I've been doing a Black Ops 2 camo grind with the hype of the new ports and everything. I'm not playing on the ports, but still. I just want to put that out there, that I'm very unbiased on how I think when I'm playing these games, and that's more or less what I try to get at. So with that being said, we'll get into some of the things that I want to talk about, and then I'll give you kind of my final thoughts. So I was going through and getting ready to kind of mess with some of the stuff in the recordings themselves, and realized that my editing software is just acting absolutely crazy. And I don't want to reset from what I had already started and start back from the beginning just in case it gets corrupted. So I'm just going to let the gameplay roll, and we'll kind of just talk about things as that goes on. I didn't want to do it this way, and I apologize, but that's just how it's going to happen. So first thing I want to go over was the world building, which you kind of saw that first clip at the beginning of the explanation of why it's being the way that it is. The actual, like, levels, so to speak, they're like little open world stages, kind of, you get to really explore, look at some of the different enemies around there, do some farming, look for items, whatever, you know, just to upgrade yourself and whatnot. They actually look really good. They are a little bit iffy in some parts, especially as you get towards like some of the later ending areas. It's kind of like hard to figure out where you need to go, and you really got to kind of go out of your way to find some of the stuff. But other than that, I really like the way they had it put together. The lighting was fantastic. The actual settings feel really good. I like the way that everything's kind of just like built around this kind of dome, so to speak, in most of the areas. And then you can go around, do optional bosses, and eventually move on to the next area. One thing that I do think was a little lackluster, and I'm sure that just kind of comes with not really having access to the kind of materials that you would really need to do it better than what it is the sound design. Especially when it comes to actually hitting things, it almost sounds muffled, so to say. Like it's basically been put through some recording software multiple times, and like the bit rate's getting kind of low, and it's just not sounding as crisp as it could. But everything else about it is really not that bad. Sorry. The weapon sounds are really good. The impacts, especially like you can see in this fight here, from this guy just stomping the fucking ground, those sounded really good. The music in the game, I absolutely loved it. So that definitely brings that up a couple notches. The music felt great for what was going on, especially in a lot of those fights. The dinosaur sounds themselves remind me a lot of Ark, and I'm sure that's because whether you are a small developer or somebody like Wildcard who's making however millions of dollars, you're obviously going to try and pick some of the free assets that sound good if you can. So I don't really blame them on that one. If we're going to get into something else that I kind of don't really much care for, is the controls. And it's really just how sensitive the target flipping is. So say you have 3 enemies, and I'm trying to think of it as like keeping my camera on the guy I'm locked onto, because it's a little wonky sometimes. It will snap no matter how lightly I would push my stick on my Xbox controller, it would just flip right next to the next guy, and it kind of like messed me up a bit. Kind of screwed me over a couple times in a couple boss fights where there just happen to be ads, especially later on in the game where that really does start to happen. But other than that, the other controls feel really good. I mean, pretty standard if you're a Souls player like me. You know, you have your B, circle, or I think it's X on Switch. I think they finally put Dark Souls on the Switch. Yeah. That's your dodge. You have your light attacks as your right bumper, your heavy attacks as your right trigger, your block is your left bumper. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Move sticks, sorry. Camera movement, all pretty much in line with that. So that really wasn't too bad. Next big thing I wanted to talk about that I actually really liked were the boss fights themselves. I really wish I could show some snippets of boss fights, because I did have a few different ones where I was just going to kind of let like part of the fight play out and talk over them, but I'm kind of upset that my recording stuff's just not really working properly and I just don't have the time to fix it. But the fights themselves were actually super fun. The one that we're seeing on screen right now was probably my favorite in the game, excluding like the final boss fights. Those were just a completely other level, which I wouldn't even show those in this anyway, because if you really want to play this game, you need to experience that without going into it knowing how the fights are going to go. I mean, I'm not one for watching stuff about games. I've talked about that before. If it's a game I know I'm going to play, I like watch nothing about it because I want to go in as bare bones as possible. That's how I feel about those fights. They were just amazing. But every other boss fight as well was also really good. They were all unique. There was no like overlaps. They had some really cool dinosaurs. There were no overlapping dinosaurs either. I mean, it was all different. Even the mini bosses. Like the first boss for the first area was the same one as the demo, and then the first boss you meet in the next area is like a world boss was a Stegosaurus, and then there was an Ankylosaurus, and then, you know, just so many other ones that kept popping up, which we'll probably see in this gameplay too of this area. This is one of the areas where I was like kind of like weirded out by it, because it's just kind of hard to navigate a little bit. I got turned around very easy, but that's besides the point. I've already talked about that. The boss fights, fantastic. Loved them. So much fun. It really kind of like tested you too, because you had to think about how to beat some of them, especially as they got later in the game. I mean, I did my stream for it on Twitch, like I try to do with every new game I get, and I actually had to do off-camera farming because one of the final fights was just too rough. Even whenever I had that much stuff already, I still just had such a pain trying to actually beat that guy. And then he ended up not even being the final fight, but that's besides the point. Well, that's really all I kind of have for it. I mean, like I said, the game's fantastic, especially for how it came to be. I mean, that's such a just amazing idea that somebody who just had a passion for animating wanted to show off his stuff. People liked it so much that they were like, I would 100% play a game with these kind of animations. And he took it upon himself to start making that game. A hell of a lot better than I could do. I mean, here I am being so lazy that I can't even fix my editing software to make the video I wanted to make. But that's besides the point. The game's fantastic. I think it's definitely worth getting if you were on the fence about it. Just keep in mind that, of course, this is a very small team. And as far as I know, in the very beginning of it, it was literally just one dude. Now he's got kind of a team of himself. He had his play testers, his Patreon supporters, which they're all in the credits and everything at the end. So they kind of are given their spot in the sun as well whenever it comes to being a big piece of this puzzle. But the game itself is definitely worth it. I will probably end up playing it again, maybe not doing an entire playthrough again, but there is a boss rush mode that you unlock after finishing the game, so I probably do want to try that, especially because I think there's an achievement for it, and this game's something that I feel worth 100%ing. Just one, it's easy, and I don't 100% games because I don't want to take the time to do it. But I also enjoy it, and that's, a mode that I haven't tried, so I think it'd be worth doing. Regardless, good game. Little pieces here and there where if they do something in the future, hopefully they have been able to acquire the funding and the studio resources to kind of like up their ante a little bit, just because I want to see these guys succeed. They made a great game basically out of nothing, and I know for a fact that they could make something 1,000 times above this if they just had those resources. So keeping that in mind, go into it and just try to have fun. And as always, I'll see you whenever I have the next game that I want to talk about.